Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, I'm on the road this week, man. I'm not in my normal
You,
surroundings, so a little emptier. You're bringing the Stack of Comics game today.
I
I don't
always
have
have
much
the
going
stack because it's in the name. It's two guys and a stack of comics, so I always bring the stack of comics.
on. Absolutely. Well, we see behind you there. You got your DC stuff. You got Superman. You got Flash. You got the J helmet. You got Wonder Woman up there. And
Yes.
DC, it is a big week. I guess, much anticipated for some, maybe not for others, but DC All In is finally going to start the first week of October this week. I believe there's a special that's going to cover what happens in the main DC universe. And then there's also going to, I guess it's like a flip book where the other half is going to be about this new absolute universe they're going through. And so we thought we would just kind of talk about some of the updates we've heard about DC All In. Most of this is stuff that's been widely available publicly, so we're not doing any spoilers or anything like that. And just our hopes if this can actually work or if it's kind of doomed to be another DC Rebirth, DC New 52 kind of thing that gets washed away. So I think the big news out of most of this has been about the Absolute Universe, which is DC's attempt at the Ultimate Universe. We've gotten some character details. I don't know how I feel about these, so I'll kind of read them off and then you tell me what your thoughts are.
All right.
So, so apparently, what this is around is Darkseid is going to play a major role in this DC All In thing. And
Okay.
in one universe, I guess, he finds the ability or has the ability to kind of strip away a lot of the comforts that our heroes have. And so, what we know about Absolute Batman, he will not be rich. He will not have been raised by Alfred. He will have grown up poor in Crime Alley. He will be an engineer, and he will kind of build his own tech instead of relying on anyone else, obviously. Alfred's not really a part of his life. There's even some rumors that maybe one of his parents survived instead of both parents. But I think I confirmed Thomas Wayne passed away. They haven't said much about Martha Wayne. So that's the Batman angle. Superman apparently is the last son of Krypton again, but did not get raised by the Kents. I think he was raised in an orphanage, which I will say is actually kind of in alignment with the old cartoons, the
The
Fleischer cartoons. But that was his backstory. But he'll have that, so he'll be a little, I guess, moodier, kind of edgier. Costumes got some redesign. I guess the cape is like made of the ashes of Krypton or something like that, which is kind of
okay.
interesting. Wonder Woman will not have grown up on Paradise Island. I guess she will have been from the
What?
underworld instead,
What?
and won't have any like sisterhood of Themyscira or anything like that. So apparently, what they're trying to do, from what the understanding is, they're stripping away a lot of, I guess, the comforts of the characters, and just having, I guess, are the characters still the heroes that we've only seen. There's been some stuff about the Flash and Green Lantern. We don't have a ton of details yet. The main three have been Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. So just those initial details for you, does this seem like it's already on the wrong track, or does any of that intrigue you as a potential reader?
Okay, so we spent a lot of time on the channel talking about what makes these heroes so endearing to us, and that is the the facts of their origins. Those settings made them who they are. I like the premise that, like, if we pulled the rug out from under them, this is what they become the heroes that they would become. I
Mhm.
like that as I like that as an angle, maybe for a short series. Let's see
Plays
how it
out.
pans out. But it is a little weird. Like, how can you have well, Superman's last son of Krypton, so that's good. But to have Wonder Woman not part of Themyscira or come from Themyscira, that's a little strange. Bruce
Yeah.
Wayne, it's kind of interesting that they throw Bruce Wayne in Crime Alley and he grew up a scrapper. Would
Hmm.
still be Bruce Wayne. I kind of like that angle. I'd like to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think one of the things is I know there's going to be a lot of complaints about this. And what I'll say is, or I actually am going to give this a lot of grace when it first starts. And again, these could all go off the rails very fast with some of the premises. They still have the main universe counterparts. So the thing is, if Absolute Batman was replacing the traditional Bruce Wayne, and all of a sudden Batman and Detective Comics no longer had Bruce as he is and
Yeah.
replaced it with this version, I would be a lot more uneasy about it and pretty upset about it. For this, again, one of the things is it's a different universe. It's supposed to differentiate from the other. I
Yeah.
don't think we really need just hey, it's Batman as you know him, but everything's the same as the main universe. I do wish this was more of an ultimate push in terms of I do wish DC overall was doing like overall for everything, take the characters back down to formula and reboot some of the things away. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that. And so what I will say is as a line, I'm not going to hold it against them if they are doing some of these different versions. Because if they're well written and engaging stories, some of the things with Batman has worked in the past where they've done different versions. Gotham by Gaslight, Bruce Wayne is not the same as the main universe.
Right.
Batman Beyond is not the same. And yes, it features a Bruce Wayne who is very similar to his traditional counterpart. But I do think you can take these characters and put them in different scenarios and see what happens. So I'll give it some grace. I'm not upset about it because it's not a line-wide reboot. If you were telling me, hey, these versions of the character were replacing the traditional counterpart, and that Superman that's behind you on the wall was getting replaced with this more, shaggy haired version who's a little edgier, I probably wouldn't be thrilled with it at all. But I will say, if you are going to do a different line of comic books to try to embrace some new readers, I don't know that it's the worst thing to try. These could go off the rails incredibly quick. I will say that. And that how far can you steer these characters away from their core tenets before they no longer become the character? And I think that's the risk that I would say is in here is if Batman still acts like Batman, as far as they just show, look, his personality was always this, and the money wasn't what made him, and the Wayne Manor wasn't what made him. The Alfred didn't make him. I wouldn't be upset with that. If instead we get a radically different Bruce Wayne who is, maybe more lenient on crime and doesn't care so much and acts a little more like a 2024 Gen Zer as opposed to Batman, that would probably bug me a lot more. But if instead it's like, hey, let's put him in some different scenarios, but his core tenets, his character, his personality is going to stay similar. I think same thing with Superman. I don't mind him being a little edgier. And then I love the big blue Boy Scout part of Superman. I will
Yeah.
say the early foundations of Superman, those early Fleischer, or not Fleischer, Siegel and Schuster comics, Superman isn't the big Boy Scout the way that he is,
Right.
in the later issues. That's more of a recent addition. And while that is always my preference, that Superman is always Mr. Rogers with superpowers, basically, I can't say that it's completely against it. I would say there's some warning lights that have popped up. That's the only thing I'll say is like I'm going to give it a lot of grace. I'm probably in for the first six or so issues on all of them, unless they just destroy it in the first issue or something.
I,
But
I
I
like
will
the
give them some
premise.
grace.
Yeah, I like the premise that they're gonna try. I like the premise. I'll say this. I like the premise if they present the characters in these new scenarios and they still, kind of end up the way we know and love them. So we can see them through their trials and tribulations of kind of like trading places. Remember
Yeah,
Eddie Murphy and Dan
Eddie
Aykroyd?
Murphy, yeah, Dan Aykroyd
Yeah,
movie, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Kind of like trading places. That would be cool to see that with these guys.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to storytelling, and I will say that's where, to me, the biggest asset that they do have is for the Batman end, at least. I think Scott Snyder's run can be slightly overrated by some, but he wrote a really, really good Batman series for a long time. And I think Nick Dragotta on art, while it's not my favorite, it's decently illustrated. I think the key for these guys is going to be, did they hire the right creators? And that's always the key to comic books, obviously. Jason Aaron on Superman worries me a little bit, I will say, but he has done better of late. His Namor series has been pretty good, and he's done a good job on TMNT, and he's written a pretty good Batman story right now. So maybe DC's kind of reinvigorated him away from some of the things he did at Marvel. Wonder Woman, I don't know. That does seem a little too out of left field, where she's like, I think from the underworld and stuff. But again, I guess you can give it some grace and see. I will say, I do think, we have seen a lot of critical reaction to this with people kind of freaking out about it and being overly negative. And again, I'm not going to, because of the failures that DC has had, and I think this is the thing
You,
that me and you as DC fans talk about a lot. The
all
New
right, I got a
52,
point for that.
The
after.
New 52 went off the rails fast. DC Rebirth went off the rails pretty fast. The whole thing that I hope this all in thing is I just truly hope there's actually commitment behind this. I hope
Yeah.
there's a goal that these absolute universes of these characters are supposed to stick around for a while. Because what I don't want another one of is, hey, it's a 6 issue mini and then it's done. And then it just kind of falls into the stack of old comics and people, 20 years from now flip to, oh yeah, that was when
Yeah.
they did that weird,
Yeah.
thing where Batman didn't have any money.
So I have a point about that. It's weird about DC. Okay, what's weird about DC is the DC fans um, are the first to hate on DC, and then of course all the Marvel fans who are DC adjacent, because we know and love a lot of Marvel fans. We love
Absolutely.
Marvel, and we love Marvel too.
No, yeah, I'm a
But
fan of
but
both.
then they pile on, and so like all the
Here
social
is where I
media,
can't.
it's just like DC could not put out a hit and have it well received.
Well, so
And
here is
they can't do it.
where
They can't do it anymore
here's
because
where I do give DC junk, and it's funny. I always draw parallels between comics and sports because I think there's so many similarities. They're two things that I've had from my childhood, and there's kind of just trends that seem to repeat themselves, right? And so like long-winded story kind of thing here, but like I'm a Chicago Bears fan.
I
The
got another.
Bears drafted a rookie quarterback this year who already is struggling, has
Yeah,
a bad offensive line, and an offensive coordinator who doesn't look like he knows how to use it, which
yeah.
echoes exactly what I've seen pretty much my entire life with every Chicago Bears rookie quarterback.
It's all
And so the thing
defense in
is, it's
Chicago.
much like DC with the Bears, where I'm like, with the Bears, I see a couple games, I see this rookie that everybody's hyped, and they're struggling, and you go, oh man, I've seen this movie before. And I think that's what DC fans have is, I would say, really since the 90s, we've seen this movie before. We've
Yeah,
seen a lot of prompt, bold initiatives. We're gonna get back to great storytelling. And I think, maybe not so much the 90s, but there was Zero Hour in the mid 90s that was supposed to reset things, and I think we had Final Crisis, and then you had New 52, and then you had, Rebirth, and that was DCU was another one. There was a new Age of Heroes. And I think that's the thing is where I don't blame DC fans so much is it is kind of like a fan of a bad sports franchise where yes, you're always loyal and yes, you want them to win and yes, you always remain hopeful.
yeah.
But
You
once
got my
things get rolling and you see some negative things, it's very easy to go, man, I've seen this movie before.
pile on so quick. Like, look, my Raiders fans this week are going crazy.
Now,
They're
me and you
going
both have,
crazy.
I mean, I'm wearing the hat of the White Sox that just finished the worst season in baseball history. But I mean, I think that's the thing is some of these brands, I think what DC has to do with this, or with DC All In more than anything. Because I know they're also revitalizing a lot of their mainline books too. So, the Absolute Universe seems to be a relatively small portion of it. 'Cause it's only 4 or 5 books right now that have been kind of teased. They are putting new creatives on essentially all of their books, or doing new jumping on points for, Batman, Detective Comics, Flash, etc. I just think the biggest thing that DC's got to do is I really just hope we see more cohesiveness with DC. And that
Yeah,
I think one of the things that has just absolutely killed the momentum for DC Comics in the last couple of years is you just don't know who the creative team's going to be. And I think that's the biggest part is I look at Batman as a character, and he's relatively more stable than most writers. But if you look at the fact that, Tom King ended on issue 85, we're at issue like 150 now. There's been 3 or 4 creative teams since then. You had, like 30 issues of one guy with James Tynion, and then Josh Williamson jumped in for like 5 or 6 issues. And then you had Chip Zdarsky's been on the book for a bit. And it's like, guys, you got to put someone on this book who's going to, especially like a book like Batman, Superman, Action Comics, Flash, some of these books that that they're going to be publishing Superman comics 5 years from now. Let's get someone who has some long-term vision. Let's get someone who can come in and go, here's my plan for this.
I
Because we
think
just
it's
keep doing these
probably.
mini reboots, and I think it feels like, oh man, here we go again. Go ahead, Mike.
I think it's probably. You know, I think it's probably an economic slash scheduling slash whatever kind of issue that they can't get these guys to stick around because they're getting more money somewhere else or offered more money for a different project somewhere
I
else.
think the only thing for that does surprise me is we don't have like a Jeff Johns at DC. Right? That's the weirdest part for me with DC lately is Marvel, some of the creative teams, I have seen some of those guys leave and take other jobs and stuff like that. DC, like, okay, Tom King wrote 85 issues of Batman, and granted his run, fell off the track at the end, but he's still writing at DC, right? He hasn't left. He's been writing all kinds of books at DC. Josh
He's
Williamson,
he's
he
got a
did a
new book
great run
coming
on The
out
Flash.
next. He Tom King just had a new book come out. I can't
Yeah,
think of it.
He has Wonder Woman, and then he's doing another miniseries. I think it's like Jenny Sparks or something like that.
Yeah,
We got
Jenny Sparks.
Jeremy Adams was on The Flash for like 2 years. He still works at DC. He's writing Green Lantern instead. And it's like, I just wish maybe it had been like, why isn't Jeremy Adams still writing The Flash? Why is a guy in-house, he gets like 2 years on The Flash and it's just done? And I think that's the thing that I'm hoping with some of these newer writers they're getting and some of these folks who are being reassigned to these books is, can we actually just get these people to commit for a little bit? In terms of let's do some story structure, let's do some things that last, let's do some things because you see the consistency in some of these books. Look at World's Finest with Mark Waid. That book's been
That
running for 30 something issues now, so we're going on I think almost year 3. That
yeah,
book's continuing. It's one of DC's best books, or probably DC's best book, because you get a flavor of what you're going to get every month. I think
yeah.
that's the biggest problem DC has is Marvel. Marvel takes a lot of wild swings with their characters and DC does too occasionally, but I think the thing is when Marvel changes it up, most of the time it's because they've hired someone brand new. The thing with DC, it's kind of rotating chairs on the Titanic sometimes with them, where it's like, okay, look, this guy was here, let's just shift him here, let's shift him here, oh, let's take this guy, move him here. And it's like, so we're not bringing in a lot of new talent. We're keeping the same guys, but then we don't even keep them on the same book, and
I
it's kind of
wonder. I wonder
it
if
just
it's
doesn't
a
make any sense.
if it is it a gripe from the artist? Like I'm tired of doing the Flash. Can I do
But
something else?
see, that's the whole thing that if you're DC, you've got to take care of is again, this is kind of like because they keep rotating the same people. It's kind of like your Raiders, right? It's like if the Raiders would fire their coach and go, okay, we're going to hire the offensive coordinator as the coach now, and the head coach is going to be the offensive coordinator. And then a year from now, we're going to swoop them again. And then, a year from now, we'll like keeping the same staff. And it's like that's the thing
Don't,
with
don't
DC is
talk to me. Don't talk to me about coaches and Raiders because like it's like
that's the
Kleenex
whole
over
thing with
there.
DC is
It's
if
like
you're truly going to change, you either need to put a guy on a book and keep him there for a long time, or you need to clean house. You can't
I,
have that we're going to keep the same 10 people, but we're never going to give consistency. But all we're going to do is have the same voices. Because if you're removing them off a book because it's failing, then that person obviously isn't doing a good job. And I don't know why you'd want to keep them in house. And if they were doing a good
oh
job,
man, that's
why would
hard.
you remove them from the book?
It's
Again,
hard.
it's
That's
the
why I'm thinking
coaching
like
thing.
maybe it's the writers or the artists are like, can I draw Flash this week and you draw Batman
But
next week?
the whole thing, artists swap so often. It's not
Yeah.
funny. I think that's the main thing is at this point with the big two, I've kind of given up on the idea that I'm ever going to see the same art in a book anymore. The days of us getting a Kirby, Steve McNiven, a Jim Lee, anything like that, who's going to come in and do 50 issues of a book and you're going to get it every month, know what it looks like. Those days are gone. Unfortunately, we're going to get 6 issues well drawn, and then it goes to it, and that's fine. I think as long as you can get somewhat competent artwork, it's okay. But the main thing is you got to keep the narrative story either going in the same direction or, much like any sports franchise, if a writer drives a brand into the ground, you can't just shift them to another brand. Again, it's like if you had a head coach who was awful and ran the team into the ground, and you went, okay, well, we're going to fire him off of that, but we're going to keep him in the building and he's still going to have input on everything. It's like if someone has run something into the ground to the point that you have to remove them, then you got to take them out of the overall all company and bring someone new in. And I think that's the thing with DC is there's so many small names at DC now. There's not, I mean, really, if you look at it, what Mark Waid's there, Tom King, Josh Williamson, Jeremy Adams. I suppose Tom Taylor's worked there for a long time, so he kind of has a reputation of how people know him, and maybe he's got some fans here and there. I'm not a big fan of his, but the rest of these writers are kind of just folks who none of us really know. And that's the thing is, if you're not getting any star talent from these folks, if none of these guys are bringing in fans themselves, and then they write a bad book, why are we keeping them around? right? Like go get someone new. It might be better to just grab someone who's never written, for DC before and just, hey, give them a shot. And we see that all the time in other industries. Like, again, I keep bringing up sports, but there's all the time that you have where coaches get fired and they go and they pull some young kid out of college and make him the coach, or they pull a coordinator off of another team who's never been a head coach. I think that's the big thing with DC is it's again DC right now they kind of seem like they keep taking in Marvel people who failed at Marvel and I'm like, oh, hey, come right for us. And it's like, no, there's a reason. Like they were the company that sells more and they drove that into the ground. Maybe you don't,
Right.
So I think the thing is that what I hope with DC All In, I'm trying to stay positive on it. I really do want it to go well. I'm going to go in with a fresh kind of slate on it. I'm going to pick up all,
I
the
am
books that
too.
look interesting to me. I would love if I'm sitting here 3 months from now talking about, man, can you believe there's 10 good comics coming out from DC every month? Just sitting on here recommending Green Arrow comic books and Batman comic books and talking about how great everything is. The biggest thing I hope is I don't want to see another New 52, another DCU, another DC Rebirth where, hey, 12 issues, okay, we're switching. Okay, 12 issues, we're switching. Oh, here's our new, DC All In 2 or whatever. Like, I really hope this is actually something they've thought through. And that's what they promised in the video when they talked about this. Um, I will say, I'm trying to go in very positive, even though there's a little bit of me that can't shake that Bears fan part of me that's like, I've seen this movie before. Um,
What-
I
I want
do
to.
want
I
to have a
want to
little bit of
say
grace for it.
that was quite a rant. I'm glad you got to vent. This is a space where we can vent as comic book fans.
Yeah, the
We
channel will
get
be
to we
changed
get
to
to vent.
Reed's rants and Mike's musings or something like that at some point.
I will. I will put on a brave face, and I will go all in on all in, like I said on the original all in video.
Yeah.
I will go all in, like all of us DC fans do, like all of us Raiders fans do. When we watch that first football game, we're all in, and see how it goes. I would like to, just I would like to say to DC fans is let's try and give it let's try and give it a fresh take.
Try to give it a whirl, see what happens.
Yeah, give it a chance. Let's see what happens. I mean, you can't go wrong with the first. I mean, if it's bad, it's bad. But it does sound interesting, and I'm curious. I'm really curious about it. So I hope it goes well for DC. We love DC. Um,
I sit here with a little negativity, but I'm trying to be positive. But I'll say there is nothing that will make me happier as a comic book fan. If
yeah,
I'm
I
sitting
know.
back here eating my own hat going, man, they're putting out 10, 12, 14 good books. All these are great. I'd love again, like I said this on our last video, other than Conan, which will always remain on my pull list.
Right,
I would love it if I'm sitting here going, Mike, I had to drop all my Marvel books, man. There's just too many good DC things coming out. I'd love
right.
that if that's the case. I don't think we're going to get there, but it'd be really cool if we do. I think last thing we'll touch on real quick before we wrap this up. DC Studios is kind of starting over as well. So like we know DC's doing a reboot. 2025 is the year of the first Superman film. I think we're getting that Creature Commandos thing that's set in the same universe as well. What I
Okay.
really hope, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. James Gunn is a comic book fan. He is running DC Studios now. I think it would be really interesting if they could bring James Gunn in to kind of have input on the comic books and do what Marvel should have done. I don't know if the
Oh,
comic book movie is going to be, as successful as it's been. We've had stuff like Deadpool and Wolverine that kind of keep it alive. But I think it would be interesting with DC rebooting on the movie side if maybe you could get someone like James Gunn to come in and kind of just get some linear stuff going on between the two, where at least some of them are feeding into each other in a way that Marvel should have been doing for the last decade.
hey, I mean, we are calling on Superman to save the day.
Yeah.
So if James Gunn can put out this big blockbuster hit and everybody loves Superman, and they put out a good showing, it could really be the shot in the arm that superhero movies need in general. But that being said, like if you can cross over with comics, and we've been ranting on that for a year now, like you could, don't forget to print a special edition just for the movie
Oh
theaters
yeah,
and
if DC would have some sort of special edition comic book that was released at the theaters
absolutely.
with the movie, or even what I would love to see them do. I know they're reluctant, but James Gunn being the storyteller there is, I think it would be fascinating if they ended the first movie And then they had a comic book series pick up right after the events of the movie and kind of fill the gap in between
with
the movies.
with a teaser comic, $4.99. When you buy your popcorn, you can get the comic. Have it at the movie theaters. I don't care what kind of distribution deal you got to pull. That will bring folks into the comic shops. If you just have the movie, maybe 10% will go creeping into a comic shop after the movie. But if you have the comic right there at the movie, it's a sale.
Might give them a shot in the arm. Really, really, really hopeful. I will say DC needed to do something, and where I do want to stay positive on this, and you and I always talk about trying to be more positive on things. What I will say is, look, I at least appreciate that DC is trying something. I don't know if it's going to work. But what I will say is, you and I have sat on here for a long time talking about DC's a little bit broken right now. They need a shot in the arm. They need a refresh. They're trying something. I don't know if it's going to work, but I at least respect the fact that they did seem to identify, hey man, things are not on the right track right now.
They got
We need to try.
Superman. They
Yeah.
got Superman. He can save the day.
Yeah, no, and
Right?
I love that from the movie standpoint and from the comics. They at least recognized, hey man, we can't just keep throwing the same stuff out. It's not working. Things are declining. I don't know if it will work, but I can't sit here and call for, hey, let's do a reboot all the time. And then they do a reboot, and I'm like, what the heck, you're rebooting? So I think
Yeah.
I think somewhat sometimes we're a little bit hypocritical on these things where, oh, they need to restart, they need to read things, they need to change things up, they need to make it fresh, they need to go
This,
through. Then
this
they
is
do
what
it,
we
we
were
get mad
calling
they do.
for. We were calling for this last year.
Yeah.
DC needs-
So
Here it comes.
it'll be interesting. I am hopeful. We will try to pick up DC All in this week. I know we'll have it. We'll see if we'll pick it up, and hopefully we can do a review on the channel. Kind of let people know our thoughts on it as it comes out. Let us know what you guys think. What are you anticipating for DC All In? Do you think this has any chance to succeed, or do you think we're doomed for another New 52 or DCU or the various other kind of? I guess like that Deadpool and Wolverine, The Void. Like DC kind of has their own The Void of all these failed reboots that are, you imagine somewhere out there, there's like New 52 Superman, hanging out with the reboot version of John Kent that got abandoned. Maybe we'll see something happen with it, but we're hoping to be hopeful with it. Let us know what you guys think below. As always, folks, thank you for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.